year ago I made a video where I gushed about everything romantic in fiction, particularly my favorite romantic tropes. And to reverse that idea and hide the fact that I don't know what other kind of video to do for Valentine's Day or the week leading up to it, we're doing the inverse. We're making like the cha-cha slide and going reverse on romance. My name is Amy Rosenfeld and today we are shitting on romance. Now here I am at the position to also talk about why I tend to stay away from the romance genre. Call me not like other girls, but the root of it is my asexuality making me a bigot. Romance as a subplot is rarely relatable to me, and so when it's an entire story within its own genre, I don't expect to like it. Granted, I am trying to spread out my tastes by reading queer romance this year because oddly enough, I find myself more likely to be rooting for a queer couple within my novels than a straight couple. And also because most queer books tend to include romance in it because that's just a big part about being queer for most people. And I'm also still here waiting for my fae drag queen story to turn up. Furthermore, there's just a lot of tropes and expectations around the romance genre that just don't make me drawn to it. Just no. And this is no means an extensive list. There's bound to be other tropes that I can't think of at the top of my head. These are just the worst 7. I should probably list them off now, and I wonder who here is going to unfollow me once I talk about these. Probably not you guys. I surround myself with a lot of like-minded followers, so let's see. Number 1, he was a boy, she was a girl. Can I make it any more obvious? Why is it that when two people are paired up and they're of the opposite gender and they're the first people who meet of the opposite gender in a book and are not related to each other, they're gonna hook up? She says guilty of this in at least 2 series that she is writing. Off the top of my head, there are 2 books that don't do that. One of them I won't name because of how problematic the author and their content are. I'm surprised this line hasn't blurred more with the inclusion of gay and sapphic romances either. It just becomes so tiring and monotonous to see the first girl fall for the first guy or vice versa. It's like when 2 characters meet and they're of opposite genders, you're just like, okay, you're gonna fall in love. And I don't like that expectation. It's so fucking predictable that a lot of the chemistry is just gone for me. Except Bridget Kemmerer, she is a fantasy romance goddess. And we follow each other on TikTok now. I was straight up fangirling when that happened, you guys. Can you tell? But can we at least have the temptress come and tempt a little later in the story or something? Have the second guy she meets be the one that she falls for? Please? Number 2, the bad boys from death row. Murder isn't hot, guys. Being held at knife point isn't sexy. Even when you do realize that it is toxic, please do not simp over this. In case you didn't know, this saturated my TikTok early last year. And I'm glad that that kind of person has fled from the For You page. The algorithm works! I've already mentioned this in my Enemies to Lovers video that this is likely the fault of the authors who are publishing this content in the first place. When this kind of stuff is able to saturate the fantasy romance market especially, it becomes desirable to those readers because they have an expectation in themselves that this is desirable. The only time I would consider a bad boy from death row to be somewhat healthy is if the partner does very similar stuff. But there are more than enough cases where this is not the case and this makes me scared. Because there's also some clear sexism here. Why is it always men? Why can't women be the killers from death row who are also hot? I don't think I'd still like them, but come on, equality! Or at least make the murder part a larger red flag than it actually is. Make some kind of greater motivation behind these kills, or have some sort of healthy therapy kind of stuff going on if they actually do feel attraction from each other so they can go about this in a very healthy way. Relationship counseling exists in here. Make it exist in your fantasy worlds. Number 3, the Libido Compass. Do you ever put your full faith and trust in a person just because they look hot? Because the number of people that do in books, for fuck's sake. It has made me either DNF a book or get very close to it in multiple occasions. Especially when nobody in or out of the story points out how creepy and stalker-like these characteristics and behaviors are. It is borderline crazy fangirl and a 5 steps away from collecting the sweat off their person's body in jars. Liters of them. I'm not saying that kind of stuff can't start some kind of interactions. But if the sole reason that you decide to follow somebody on a quest is because they're hot, that's too far. No. The only time that I would see that happening is if they had consumed some substances like alcohol or drugs. But these are often teens who are doing that who have had not a single drop of alcohol in their lives. Furthermore, in my record, teens are usually a lot shyer to confess their feelings. So in my experience, there has never been a more unrealistic romance trope than the Libido Compass. Number 4, Parasocial Favours. For those of you who are unaware, parasocial relationships defines a relationship that isn't reciprocated, particularly between fans and celebrities. This is where the fan knows everything there is to know about a celebrity because of the information they decide to disclose to the public. But the actual celebrity does not know their fans and is making sure that they are presenting an image and not their truest self. And this kind of relationship eventually turning into an actual relationship, romantic or sexual, in a book is creepy. As are most of the tropes on this list now, I realize. Any romance that will hinge off this kind of stuff, even if it isn't a celebrity, is very stalkery. But there's one particular trope that hinges off of this that just makes my stomach coil. The nice guy, where someone is doing all of these favors towards a person and they expect that means their love is bought. Jesus Christ, that's objectification. Just give up on them if they're clearly not showing any signs back, please. Number 5, The Homewrecker Wins. So you're reading a book where a couple starts off together. How much are you willing to bet that they'll still be a couple by the end of the book or series? Well, I hope you're betting low because someone's gonna come and homewreck, baby. I have never seen a more predictable romance, and I only know one story that defies those expectations. It's like you can never ever have a healthy relationship because someone is always going to come and split you two apart. Another trope I realize is that while this homewrecking is happening, they realize that the initial relationship was very toxic. Why do they have to come in and have a homewrecker come in to make them realize that it is toxic? Why does it always have to be an intervention? Why can't they just work it out between each other if it's, you know, that bad? Number 6, Student Teacher. This is super gross. It breaks laws and it breaks decencies. It made me DNF a book when it was implied and no romance had actually happened yet. I don't see why this is popular because from my experience, this kind of outcome is non-existent. Yes, it is fairly recognizable for teens to be able to recognize somebody who is older and more attractive. But at least in my experience, nobody has ever made moves towards a teacher or tried to favor them in any way to be able to get a romance out of it. I did not finish a book where a 15-year-old tried to show affection to a 25-year-old staff member of this high school by baking him cupcakes. I didn't read on to see if it was successful, and I have never heard anybody do any such thing in my fucking life. Second, if this kind of stuff does happen, I can imagine the student getting shut down, the teacher very toxically and creepily grooming the student, or the cops getting involved. Because this has to be rare. I want it to be rarer than rare. We are taught about the morality and rules surrounding this on a regular basis. And when it gets framed in a book as some kind of forbidden romance and gets romanticized that way, what the actual fuck? Number 7, Abusive Partners. I'm looking at you, Coho. I don't normally read romances. I am just starting queer romances. But one kind of romance I never, ever expect myself to read is a mafia romance. Because every single mafia romance I have heard of hinges on a freaking toxic and abusive relationship. I wouldn't even want to read it ironically just knowing how bad that stuff can get. I would rather eat a raw steak covered in chili powder and then be denied any form of liquid for the 3 hours after consuming such a monstrosity. When I first went onto TikTok, every teen girl on there wanted to meet their partner with a blade against their throat. And this never gets addressed or talked about, and they know it's bad, but they still fantasize about it. No, 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 no. I don't trust the straight and white on book talk because they're particularly guilty of it. It's always in straight white stories now, God. Save what generation, what comes after Gen Z. Well, I guess I better finish it up now, because I've done everything and I want to hide from the world. If you did enjoy this video, give this a thumbs up and subscribe if you are new around here. You can ring that bell to find out when I post more creative content. If you think romance is dead, ASTER'S CODA exposure. The series gets romance later, but the first book doesn't have any romance whatsoever. Follow Abby Attacker as she dives into the three worlds and finds her place in it in the midst of an otherworldly blood feud. And while you're down in the description, you can check out my Instagram, my TikTok, and my website. Stay creative, everybody, and I'll be seeing you in the next video.